Hey everybody, Nick here, and today we're going to take apart this little guy right here. This is the MachineWise Sonora Pocketknife. That's right, this video is going to just be a disassembly. I'm kicking it old school for the channel with this one. We'll talk a little bit about more why that is more later, but yeah, for the moment, let's go on ahead and take this guy apart. Now, I haven't done this yet. I have owned this knife now for maybe 6 months or so. Never took it apart. I know that's going to shock some of you because clearly I take everything apart. But we're going to go on ahead and see what we can do here. So in terms of tools, I really only should need one. This is the package it came in, which is actually kind of cool. It's just looks like a 3D printed sort of situation. And inside of here we have the card. We have some lubrication that I'll go on ahead and use for this, and then we have ourselves a Torx bit here, and I believe this is just a good old-fashioned T20 situation. I believe, T15, sorry. So it comes with actually everything you need to service it. Technically, you do need a screwdriver handle. For that, I'm going to use this little guy from Monterey Bay Knives. I happen to have it handy. But we're going to take this guy apart. This is an integral pocket knife. I mean, before I go any further, I suppose I should say this is an integral knife, right? So everything here, this side and this side, are the same piece of material. It just wraps around, and all of this machining that you see in here is purely aesthetic. This is one solid chunk of titanium. That becomes clearer when you look at it on the inside, right? It's just one piece. And so that means that the only screw that I need to interact with, although I could certainly take off the clip screw, I don't need to. It doesn't make sense to. But the only thing I need to take out is this little guy right here, which is the pivot screw, right? And my suspicion, not having gone inside this, is that when I take off this pivot screw, that's going to allow me to pop this piece off. When this piece comes out, then the pivot can come out with it, which will allow the blade to come free. And I bet that there's also a hole underneath here in which the stop pin goes, because in order to take the blade out, I'm going to want to be able to remove the stop pin. I don't know, actually, whether the button is going to stay captive within there. I would sort of expect it might, but we're about to find out. So let's go on ahead and pop this guy loose. Oh boy, that's wanting some torque. It feels like there's a little bit of thread locker going on here, or I'm not going backwards, am I? No. It's just wanting some torque. So what I'm going to go on ahead and do is offer it the torque it desires. I take out my my ratcheting little set here, and I'll go ahead and just put the tool in there. I could probably do it with the screwdriver here, but if I'm putting torque on it, I kind of want a little bit more control. And there we go. And we have popped loose. Yeah, so it just had some thread lock around there. Nothing too, impenetrable or anything. I just wanted to be a little bit more careful when I'm putting that force on there. Okay, so we have a nice long pivot screw here. Oh, that's an interesting... Huh. I've not actually seen a pivot screw like that. It's got a very low thread pitch for good adjustability, but the threads don't go that deep into it. I wonder if this is custom. Either way. So now the pivot screw is out, and that means that I should be able to probably push the pivot through, I think is going to be my next step. So I'm going to grab this little watch spring bar tool here, because it just happens to be available to me. And I'm going to try and press the pivot through. Whoa, and when I did, oh, the button just pops out because the button is held in place by the blade itself. Okay, so the button came flying out of there. That's good. This appears to be one piece. Yeah, this pivot here appears to be a single piece. The blade should maybe come out now, although actually it might be that I have to lift the bearing out. Why does the blade not want to come out? Okay, so I was correct in that there is a hole here for the stop pin. So that'll come out. Do I just need to pull a little bit? Yeah, okay, I just needed to pull a little bit, and there we go. And what we're going to see here is that, oh, this is a bushing style pivot. Interesting. All right, so it's very, very... They talk on their website about the tolerances required to get this to the right tightness, but... yeah, impressive. This is on washes? No. With the action like this, I figured this must be on... Holy crap! This thing is on washes! Wow! I absolutely didn't... There's not like hidden bearings or something. No, there's the bushing for the pivot. There were the hardness pokes. You can see here they did 3 different hardness tests on this, which is itself kind of a flex. This thing is that damn smooth on washes. Holy cow. I knew this thing was good, but damn. All right, so let's clean this up. I'm just using some rubbing alcohol, and I think I said this, but if you're curious about any of the tools I'm using, maybe excepting the ones that they shipped with it, nickshabazz.com/tools, but holy cow, things on washes. That's wild. Okay, just popped out the bushing there. I'm going to grab a Q-tip, put some booze on it, just ripen this all down with rubbing alcohol, and just making sure I get in all the various nooks, crannies, etc. Wow. Okay. Clean off the bushing. And I'll clean out the inside of it too, because I'll relubricate all this. This knife, spoiler alert, has one of the best actions I've ever handled. Like, period. Like, there is one custom knife that I have in my collection that has a better action than this. One. You know, it is towards the top end. It is at the level at which it is no longer relevant whether there is something better than it, because better than it is going to be very, very hard to evaluate, right? Just cleaning out the inside here, and I'll just drive this Q-tip and drag it along the bottom here to delintify the situation. Okay, so we are now fully disassembled, right? I mean, I could, I guess, pull the stop pin out, but I don't know that I need to, particularly. And frankly, I'm not sure that I quite know how to. I could, like, put this in there and try and pry, but it seems happy, and I'm happy. So let's just let it be happy. And then as I'm here, let me make sure I cleaned out the plunge. But the fact that that action is happening on washes is excellent. Okay, so now how do we put this guy back together? Order of operations dictates that I'm going to need to put the button lock in at a certain point. Here, I'll clean out around the button lock. Just that way. If there's any gunktion around there, I get that out. Yeah, a little bit of gunk accumulated. This knife has been carried a fair amount, so what you see in here is, well, dirty. So let's go on ahead and clean this out. Order of operations, generally speaking, how am I going to get this in there? At the very least, I know the bushing needs to go inside the blade hole, like the hole in the blade. Oh, interesting. I'm not necessarily a big fan of the plastic applicator here. I much prefer on a knife lubrication bottle a slightly more precise sort of needle-style applicator, like on this knife pivot lube. But let's give it a shot. It's not prohibitively large, but it is a little less than ideal and is probably going to result in me using a lot more lubrication than is desired, but I would have done that anyways, so yeah. So I'll pop in this bushing and then just kind of rotate, rotate, rotate. Now what I want to do, I'll go ahead while I'm thinking about it here and lubricate the pivot itself. Then, did I clean off these washers? I feel like I did, but I'll do it just in case. Then what I'm going to want to do is probably apply some lubrication to one side of the washers. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lubricate the blade where the washers go. I'm over-lubricating here. What a shock. I'm going to lubricate one side of the washers. This is the side that's going to go against the handle. The reason I'm doing this is actually not for the lubricational purposes, but actually for adhesive purposes. Are these washers the same size? Yes, they are. Because what I want to do now is I want to stick these washers to the inside of the handle. Because if you look on the inside of the handle, hopefully you can see this, there are no pockets that the washers live in. They just sort of float around in there. And so I want them to get to a position and stay there. And a little bit of lubrication is a good way to do that. See, now that I've got this lubricated, I can basically move this around and that washer is staying put. Right, so I've done that on one side. Now I'll do that for the other side. Come off it. And then hopefully, got a little bit of lube on the hands there. That's okay. A little bit of lube is occasionally helpful. I think I'm going to need to apply more for it to get good stiction, but yeah, no, it seems okay. Okay, so now what I have is the, and I've done that side as well. Great. Now what I want to do is gently insert the blade between those washers. This might not be straightforward. Is there a better way for me to do this? Arguably, what side does the pivot go in? There's nothing else that needs to live underneath that, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the pivot, and I'm going to drop it a little tiny bit of the way in. My goal is actually to secure at least one of the two washers. This is going to be one of those moments where I wish I was an octopus. Okay, so I've got the pivot in place, and I'm applying some lateral pressure to it. The goal here is just that'll keep it in the right position, and that fixes one of the two washers in place. The other one instantly started sliding, and now fell out. Okay, here's another option. I can do this. I can put this washer on the blade. This other washer is fixed in place by the presence of the pivot. And then I can try and just slide everything together here. This is feeling a little bit not perfect. But what I can do is get the blade at least partly in place. I'm going to need to seat this. Let me seat the button now, too. Get that little bit of fabric out of there. The reason I'm seating the button now is that I know that once I get the pivot in place, the blade will no longer move in such a way that the spring comes out. And I'm pulling that out of there because I dropped the spring in incorrectly. So I'm going to use this little oiler. Oh, come off it. I'm going to use this little oiler here as an orientation tool to drop the spring in vertically, which is what I should have done to start. And then I'm going to press this in. Feeling the octopus thing right now. There we go. Okay, so now the button is in... No, it's not in place yet. I need to move the knife blade down just a touch in order for it to be able to get seated. And there went my pivot. Great. Okay. Octopus engage. Let's see here. Am I doing something stupid? Probably. But do I know what it is? No. Okay. Come on. Get in place there, button. It feels like it's just wanting to... Why are you... Maybe the blade is just in the wrong position. Is my spring properly oriented? Yes, it is. But the button is too high. Oh, okay. We're getting close. There we go. Button is in. Okay, great. So now, in a perfect world, what I'm going to do is not that. That is not what I want to do in a perfect world. In fact, that was a wildly imperfect world. Kind of like the one we live in today. All right. Now what I want to do, though, in this perfect world, is get... Oh. Okay, good. The world just got a little closer to perfect. What just happened there? Do I have all the parts? Yes, okay, good. What just happened there is I was able to get... no, the world sucks. Shocking nobody. Reason I say that is that this washer came out too. So in fact, I have nothing in the proper orientation excepting the button. Okay, so let's go on ahead and back things up. Okay, so what we're going to do here is remove the pivot. Gonna just Yeah, let me use a plastic tool here if I'm going to be prying over beautiful anodized titanium. Okay, I'm going to get that pivot out of the way. I'll put my finger on the... okay, we're still in the knife blade. Okay, so I'm holding the button in place. Where did the other washer go? The other washer is here. Where is the other washer? The other washer is here. Great. So I want to get this washer in place. I want to maneuver it in full octopus mode here. Once it is here, I want to push the pivot out just a little tiny bit. There we go. Such that it is at the level of the washer. Now, with my thumb, I am simultaneously applying pressure to this going this way and to the button going here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the blade. Once I do that, and I confirm that I in fact have the washer still in position, I'm going to start trying to push the pivot in. Oh, and I just moved the button, so the button now wants to be in a different position. Can I convince the button? No. Come on, button. Get in place. Integrals are a big machining flex. They're cool. But they are just not as straightforward to put together and take apart. Okay. Oh, you little bugger. Come on. Mind you, this is no different than most integrals, although the exception being with a frame lock, there is one less piece to consider. That is, there's no button. Okay, button is in place. Great. Is the washer still in place? It is. Great. Now, I need an extra finger here. Okay. Hey. Oh. Pivot just popped in. Button popped out. But is that okay? Can I seat the button with the pivot in place? Maybe? Well, if it can pop out with the pivot in place, then I can probably pop it in with the pivot in place. He says optimistically. Let me try that. I'm just using this spring bar tool here to kind of try and seat the button. Maybe I should be... The spring bar tool is a very soft metal. That's not ideal, but in this case, the fact that it is cheaply constructed is actually working vaguely in my favor. What I really need is like a long plastic spudger, but for the moment, let's see if this will work. Could it be that it'll... No. Certainly won't seat with that closed. Okay. And by the way, the other washer still isn't in place. I'm aware of that. That's going to be my next little task. But that I can do. Once I get the pivot in and the button in, I should be in a good place, he says optimistically. Oy, oy, oy. Okay. Is there any chance I'm getting this button in place? I don't... Oh, hold on. That looks promising. Or feels promising. Just a little bump this direction, maybe? Oh, no, not up. Just in. We are so very close. We're torqued a little bit this direction, so if I maybe give it a little bit of a nudge. Nope, no, that was too much nudging. Yeah. Oh, this feels promising. This feels very promising. But I'm still sort of off to the side here. I'm off kilter. Whatever kilter is, I'm not on it. Oh, no, down. Oh, you go in, you little bastard. Feels like maybe I need to be up at have the handle at a severe angle here. This looks so close, but also so far. All right. I'm going to back it off again. Go back to the land of the pivot isn't fully seated. Maybe that'll give me what I need. So I need to get this button in. And then once I do that, yeah, now let's pull the pivot back. And in a perfect world, I'm going to take the pivot to the place where the blade can move a little bit, but the washer is still captive in there. And it is, and it is. Good. Now if I seat the button, I'm sorry that this probably isn't the most visible thing ever, but I'm trying to narrate my way through this. But unfortunately, it is all happening in a narrow little crack there. Okay. Button is in. Button is in. Now, if I can get the... Is the washer in place still? The washer is still in place. Now, if I can get the blade in place, and I'm kind of using my disassembly... Oh, yeah, okay. Pivot is in. Button is in. I'm going to close the knife right now. The reason I'm doing that is I know the button can't come out when the knife is closed. Now, final step here. He says very optimistically, I've lowered the pivot such that I cannot see it from the side. I hope you might not be able to see that, but the pivot is not actually currently sticking out past the blade. Now my dream, my hope, my fondest desire is that I will be able to shove this washer in place. Whether I can do that or not, well, that's a whole other world, isn't it now? But my dream is that I can get... Oh, yeah, okay, good. So we're starting. My hope is that I can basically move this washer such that it goes into that gap. Oh, no, I think I pulled the pivot, pushed the pivot out a little bit. So I'll pull the pivot back just a smidge. Good. There's a fair amount of... And I also need to make sure the bushing is down. So I'm going to just kind of tap that down just in case. It's not wanting to go in. But I think the pivot bushing is up. And that will also block the washer. So I just moved it down. There you go. Now, this is a lovely situation to be in, because I can see the washer. The pivot is in. I'm going to press the pivot against the washer, but not hard. Just like kind of keeping enough pressure to make sure this doesn't move down. Now I'm going to reach in here with my spring bar tool. I'm going to try and basically fish this washer very gingerly. Like my hair just turned red, it's that ginger. And now, once I do that, and I have that in the right position, I'm going to gently apply pressure from the back here. And gently is a key word. I need to rotate the pivot, and it's in. So, let's double check that everything's correct. I have a washer on both sides. I can see that now. The bushing, if the bushing was sitting here on the table, you would have seen a grown man cry. There's no shame in that necessarily, but also, oh boy, I would feel shame for the bushing being there, but it isn't, right? The bushing is installed. The washers are there on both sides. The stop pin is present. This insert is there. I believe, and I'm not going to push my luck by testing it before I put the pivot in. What I'm going to do here is use some thread locker, just some Loctite on a stick here. And I'm going to tighten, put this in place. And I'm just going to moderately tighten it. It's a bushing pivot, so I should be able to tighten it fully, but oh yeah. Yeah, that action's still really sweet. Okay, yeah, that's good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten the pivot fully, and by that I just mean I'm going to take it to finger tight. And it's a bushing, well, so there should be very little play. Loosen just a touch. Beautiful. Beautiful as well. I'm going to loosen just a little tiny scotch more. That was maybe too much of a scotch. Oh, yeah. Check for blade play. 0 blade play. And we are fully reassembled. So, if I were talking to myself in the past, if I were to say, Nick, it's me from the past, from the future, that is. From the past, that's not very helpful. Like, hey, you got this, is the best I could offer from the past. But if I was going at this from, Nick from the future, giving myself full advice as to what was going to go on, the advice I would give myself there would be, I guess, insert the button first. I don't think it was actually a missing advice issue. It's just a skill issue. I'm going to be real with you here. But anyways, we were able to get it back together quite successfully. Integrals are trickier, right? Because you have to do all of that. Oh, and by the way, if you're having trouble getting that washer into place, one very good tool they actually provide you is a business card. Because it actually should fit. Yeah, it fits quite nicely in the gap between these things, and you're not going to damage anything with a piece of paper, right? So they actually do provide you every tool you need, which is nice. So, although actually I disagree with this. No corners cut. Indeed, that's a cut of a corner there, and they've cut out a couple of corners in a couple of places here. But yeah. Generally speaking, you want the corner of the knife to be cut. Otherwise, it doesn't have it. Anyways, I digress. But this is this factory torque. They're saying it's torqued to 3 nanometers. I'm going to assume this means Nick meters, and I have now done that. But I basically dialed it to a place where it feels correct, right? I didn't do the Newton meter testing because I don't happen to have a torque wrench handy here. But if I did, I'm sure I could, and it would be perfection. But frankly, it's already perfection, so no argument there. So that's the disassembly. Integrals are tricky, but that one was not substantially worse than most, possibly excepting the joy of getting the button in position. But even still, that was not particularly hard. By the way, that opened not accidentally. I was pressing the button. I'm just checking the free swing it through to the motion. I genuinely thought this was on bearings. That should tell you a little something about the quality. It was like, why would you have bearings and a bushing? But it was so smooth that I figured it must be. Wow. So yeah, anyways, there you go. That's the disassembly. Hope this has been interesting to you, and keep an eye out on the channel for the full review, probably in an hour or two. So yeah, have yourselves a good one. Bye now.